What's going on, guys? Matt here at MKS Performance. We've got a treat for you today. As you can see, we are quite busy. We've got this 2-litre TFSI that we're doing a motorsport blueprint on. It's all been freshly rebored out to 83mm, so we've just done the double checking on that. Obviously, our machine shop is very good. They will double check their work, but there's no harm in me checking the work as well. In fact, it's good practice. So here we go. So first things first, engine block. All pretty, all looking good, beautiful looking hones. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to get our bore mic here. Nice Mitimo DTI clock on there, digital, very accurate. And we've got our mic. Now we'll set that to 83mm, very simple. Set our bore gauge between there, zero it. So if it's minus on the screen is bigger, I know it sounds weird, minus is bigger, and if it's positive, or if it's plus, should I say, it's smaller than it should be. So here we go. So you then drop that into the bores. We'll do two forms of measurements. We'll do a 12 to 6 o'clock position, top, middle, bottom, and then we'll do a 9 to 3 o'clock, top, middle, and bottom again, and we'll record our measurements. So the measurements, I've already calculated the ring gaps. We run custom ring gaps on this. It's down to basically how the car is going to be, what kind of turbo it's going to have and the way it's going to be driven and stuff like that. Our meth machine actually has custom gaps that we run specifically for hybrids, because they do put a lot more stress in the cylinders than a traditional big turbo would. So we usually increase the gaps. So we've got our specs here. As we can see, we've got quite good tight groupings, a shade under there, but I'm not too overly concerned about that. The rest of it is looking quite honest. It's a real science honing out blocks, because obviously when you bore it to the next size, you've got to be very careful. You let the block cool before you take your final measurements. Obviously, if you take your final measurement and the block is still at 40 degrees, it's going to shrink and the pistons will gall up in the cylinders because they're too small. So typical demonstration for you: front is at 6, rear is at 12, timing belt is at 9, flywheel at 3. So that's pretty much a done deal. As we can see, we've already got the pistons and conrod assemblies already set up to go. They've all got assembly lube on it. Can't stress that enough, guys. When you're building engines, doesn't matter if it's fucking a lawnmower engine or a Formula 1 engine, it needs assembly lube. So the assembly lube that we highly recommend is Permatex Ultra Slick. That stuff makes spider webs everywhere. It's really, really good stuff. That, I mean, the look at the cling factor on that. I don't know if you can really see that, but that's like a stickier than a tar on a Friday night. What can I say? So obviously we've got a bit of cleaning to do on the crankshaft. We'll get that looking fucking like I can see my face in the bearing ends for the journals. We tend to use a little bit of polishing paste and a very thick shoelace. Once we've obviously degreased it and cleaned it properly, because we don't want to drive any of the dirt into the actual bearing journals. So a nice mirrored finish helps to deglaze all the carbon buildup and stuff like that. Then we've got our custom ring gapper. This is just something I made out of scrap. So you'll basically, I'll leave that there, I'll get a ring for you. That's the top ring. We'll go into a little bit more in depth each stage of the way as we build these engines. When you're ring gapping these, it's very important. Come on, focus, thank you. You only ring gap it on one side. Do not gap it on both sides, because you want one to be perfectly parallel. So when you're gapping these, you've got a good parallel surface there to basically know that you've ground that end perfectly flat to match that end. So basically we'll just stick that in the vise, stick that there, and with the other hand turn the funnel, as you can see there. Don't stick a cordless drill on the end of it, because you'll just take too much off and you'll need new rings. So same again, make sure that the rings are, I tend to do all the rings, I tend to do them on one side. So you can see there's a number here. That basically just means that piston ring, that's the top ring, and it has to face, that's the way it faces up. So letters facing up the way. So that's the top ring. Then we have the second ring, which is basically an oil scraper. I don't know if the camera's going to pick this up or not, but there is a focus. focus on my thumb. Here we go. See that little ridge just almost on the outer perimeter? Fucking cat hair. That is basically the oil scraper, so that will face down the way. So, and then you can see again, you got a nice little number there. Come on, focus. I wonder if that would work. There you go. Oh, I think we had it. Come on. There you go. So, yeah, number's facing up the way. So, we'll then put the rings into the dedicated bores. We'll then use the pistons to lower them down to make sure that they're square to the deck or perpendicular, if you want to be smart. And we'll then stick a feeler gauge in there just to make sure the gaps are set correct. Once it has been gapped, beg your pardon, can't speak. Once it has been gapped, you need to quarantine and identify that ring because it is specific to that bore only. So, yeah, there's a lot to do. So that's basically what we've just been doing this afternoon. Is basically prep work, homework, and now we're going to do some ring gapping. So we'll do a separate video. So we'll do like a video for like the piston assembly or piston overview, if you want to call it that. Then we'll go into the piston rings, and then we'll look at measuring oil clearances on the crankshaft, oil clearances on the big ends. Obviously, because we're using studs for the mains and the head, I'm not really fussed about the head, but because of the mains, there's an argument that the increased clamping load can deform the bearing caps. I've not seen it happen yet using this, so it's always worthwhile checking. We have brand new bearings we're going to be using there. So yeah, okay guys, cheers.